In the previous video, we introduced two terms, Satya and Mithya. We saw that Satya means independent reality and Mithya means dependent reality. We took the example of the gold chain to show how gold is actually the Satyam or the truth of that object. In this video, the inquiry is about this body and mind, which we consider as ourself, which we consider as truly ourself. Now, we will see how body and mind are actually mithya, not satya. And then, if body and mind are mithya, then what is the satyam of the body and mind? So let's begin with the body. If I ask you, what is the body? What would you say? You would perhaps point at this form and say, this is the body. So I will ask you, what is it that you're pointing at? So you will say, this form. So I said, okay, you can keep whatever this that you're referring to. I will take the hands, I will take the legs, I will take the head, and I will take the torso. So you will say, hey, body is the hands, body is the legs. So I will say, no, you are talking about body. I am talking about hands and legs and torso. These are different names. So you will say, but the body cannot be without hands and legs and torso. So I will tell you, yes, that's true. Body is just a name for all these forms put together. So what is body? Body is just a name which doesn't really correspond to anything. There are just different forms put together which we call body. So the word body is mithya. Now we have four names: hands, legs, head, and torso. Are these really satyam? They are also mithya. They are again equally dependent realities. If I say that this is hand, then what am I referring to? Am I referring to the skin? Or am I referring to the bones? Or am I referring to the blood? Or am I referring to the flesh? What am I referring to? So you will tell me, all of this put together is hand. So again, like body, hand is also mithya. It is just a name for all these forms put together. The bone, the flesh, the blood, everything. If I keep the blood, if I keep the flesh, will you have hand? You won't. So now from hand we have now moved on to blood, flesh, bones. Now if you say that these are the satyam of this hand, then again you are wrong. What is the flesh? What do you refer to as the flesh? The flesh is nothing but cells. So we can bring in the knowledge of science and try to understand what are these forms really. that which you refer to as flesh is again just a name for millions of tiny forms put together called the cells. Cells are that which the flesh depend upon. Flesh is nothing but the cells. If I keep the cells, you cannot have the flesh. So the whole body can be reduced down to cells. It is just billions and billions of cells put together. And they are constantly changing. The cells that you were born with are no longer there. The minute I complete this sentence, the whole body has changed. So it is not even a constant truth. It is not even a constant reality. It is constantly changing. The cells are constantly changing. Now again, is the cell really one object, one solid entity? It's not. Bring in the knowledge of science. Cell again is just a name for a lot of small forms put together. You take away one of those forms and the cell cannot exist. So again, cell is mithya. And we can keep doing this from cell to molecules, to atoms, to particles. We can keep going on and on and on, and we'll see that these are just names for forms within forms within forms. This is the vision that Vedanta wants to understand about the whole physical universe. Take any object in the universe. It is just a name for forms within forms within forms. Each form is as mithya as the previous form. So where is the Satyam? Where is the Satyam? Where is that which all these forms depend upon? Science is trying to find that Satyam equally. From atoms it goes to particles. From particles it goes down to smaller particles which it calls quarks and leptons. And every few years it comes up with smaller and smaller and smaller particles which they say are the ultimate reality. And then they discard the previous particles as mithya. Now Vedanta tells us, Vedanta does not go in looking for smaller and smaller particles. Vedanta tells us that all matter is mithya. All matter essentially depends upon the laws of nature. If you look at these particles, which we have reduced this body down to, what are these particles? These particles are nothing but the laws of nature. The laws have created those particles. The laws bring those particles together. They bring them together in a manner that they create certain kinds of atoms. Then they bring those atoms together that they create certain kinds of cells. Then they bring those cells together and form this entire body, which functions so perfectly. So this entire physical form can be reduced to, or can be seen as dependent upon the laws of nature. You remove one of those laws and this body cannot exist. So the body can be said to be dependent upon the laws of nature. Now what about the mind? The body might be mithya, but what about the mind, which we relate to as ourself? Let's try and understand what do we refer to as the mind. The mind is we can say that it is, what is it? It is just thoughts, emotions, memory, all these things put together. What are thoughts? Thoughts are again just electrical signals in our brain, some neurons ticking, and you remove even one of those things and the thought cannot be. And every moment the thought is changing. Every moment the emotion is changing. So, if we apply the same understanding to our mind, we will say that mind again is just a name for many small forms put together. There are thoughts and there are innumerable thoughts. There are emotions. There is also the memory, which is again changing, building, rebuilding, lapsing, existing, non-existing. So it's all variable. Mithya is dependent as well as variable. Satyam has to be invariable. It has to be that which is constant. That which is not just independent but constant. It cannot be changing. It cannot be one moment this and the other moment that. So again, the mind is nothing but these thoughts and emotions and various small subtle aspects put together. In the body we have physical aspects put together. In the mind we have various subtle forms put together, which we refer to as the mind. And if we look at each of those forms, we will see each of them is equally mithya. And as we reduced this body down to the laws of nature, similarly we can see that the mind too can be reduced down to the laws of nature. What is it that is making those neurons tick? What is it that is governing the inflow of one thought and the outflow of another thought? How does one understand these thoughts? So all of that is governed by the laws of nature. It all depends upon the laws of nature. So we can say that just as the body is dependent upon the laws of nature, similarly the mind too is dependent upon the laws of nature. Just as we reduced the body, the mind to the laws of nature, we can extend this understanding to all things in nature, all things in this universe. Everything that we see around us, the rivers, the trees, the mountains, the flowers, the people around us, all the various organisms, even the far-off galaxies, the stars, the planets, everything can be reduced down to the laws of nature. All the physical world and the subtle world can be reduced down to the laws that we cannot see but exist. These are studied in science as various laws of gravity, laws of thermodynamics, and innumerable laws are studied in science. So we are not talking about any specific law, and we are not going to study any specific law here. What we are just trying to understand is that this entire physical and subtle universe is essentially dependent upon the laws. The laws put it all together, keep it all together, they bring it into being, they sustain it, and they maintain it. So the physical universe and the subtle universe is entirely dependent upon these laws for its existence. But even these laws are mithya. In the vision of Vedanta, these laws themselves are mithya. These laws are not yet the ultimate reality of who we are or what this universe is. What is the ultimate reality of these laws? We'll see that in the next segment.